let me make one thing perfectly clear. As much as I'm not into the idea of We Bare Bears getting a spin-off of We Baby Bears, along with the fact that the 4th season had so many baby episodes to the point that it's starting to become a little bit more repetitive, I still found almost all the baby episodes really entertaining. Regardless of what you feel about these episodes, they're actually a good addition for what they do for We Bare Bears, especially watching the movie where these 3 characters meet each other for the first time. And granted, I've only reviewed 2 episodes, Christmas movies and Yowie and the Bear, but the reason why I review those is because I'm supposed to celebrate Christmas of last year, and also review a really heartbreaking episode involving one of the Cubs. But for a change, I'm just gonna let this out of the way. I'm not gonna be adding any of the other solo episodes that involves Baby Grizz and Baby Panda. Mainly the fact that Family Troubles and Panda 2 are mostly a video that can be discussed when it comes to the development before they meet each other for the first time. Granted, looking at the episodes that involves the pandas grown up is mostly a difference, but compared to what you see involving the baby episodes, especially of how they meet each other in the movie, they really know how to actually put our focus a lot more on the baby episodes, and the fact that it got a lot of popularity by fans from the fan base. Granted, I would talk about these episodes, but at the same time, it's gonna be for a later time. It may be cute, but considering that they're actually important enough to be mostly review related, it's not gonna be, these 2 episodes are not gonna be part of this list. So, for this occasion, as part of We Bare Bears Month, I'm gonna be counting down the top 10 baby episodes from We Bare Bears. But just We Bare Bears. Not from the baby spinoff, just We Bare Bears, and that's it. Since that there's so much to discuss when it comes to these episodes, it's gonna be a lot more interesting to actually find some kind of relatability in these episodes for what the characters do during their cub times. So anyway, let's get this started. Number 10, Bunnies. Out of all the episodes I've seen involving the baby episodes, this episode isn't terrible nor lackluster, but on the other hand, I consider it the weakest when it comes to the baby episodes. The bears are walking by the road to a chocolate festival that is 150 miles away, and then they see a garden with bunnies that are getting attacked by a pack of crows or something. And Baby Panda accidentally attacked them after he rolled down the hill, along with Ice Bell stopping the crow from taking any of the food from the rabbits. And after saving the bunnies' foods, the bunnies offered the bears to stay with them as a token for their gratitude. For an episode that centers around the bears just trying to find a new home while completely trying to be independent by completely finding their own place in life, this episode is actually a lot more entertaining than I give it credit for. The reason why it's at number 10 is the fact that even if it may be toned down, it is still mostly predictable, since that we all know that the bears won't stay with the bunnies for a place to stay. For what this episode mostly does is, let's just say, overboard cuteness. But when it comes to that, in other episodes that I'm going to be talking about as the video continues, you can easily tell that they did the cute moments a lot more consistently. And yes, I understand that these characters that we're watching are animals, and the bunnies are really thankful for the bears for saving the food, but at the same time, they're just doing this for the sake of cuteness. Granted, I'm mostly on board with this type of cuteness, but after watching the other episodes, this episode can easily be overlooked when it comes to the episodes as this video continues. I would say that this episode is actually entertaining while the Bears and Bunnies are trying to come up with a plan in order to stop the Crow from getting the food constantly, but on the other hand, that's really the major highlight through this entire episode. And while the bit of Panda having the motivation to stay away from any danger does make sense, but considering that he's mostly into the mood of just trying to eat chocolate from the festival, and the fact that his brothers are getting under attack is mostly, like I said, predictable, because we all know that Panda is gonna save his brothers at the end regardless. I mean, he managed to get captured. He managed to get someone to drive with him to get to the chocolate festival, but at the same time, he has a change of heart. I know I'm not giving this any more credit, but at the same time, sometimes these baby episodes, as much as they're really entertaining, doesn't mean that they're mostly avoidable for criticism. And the bit where Panda completely uses all the bunnies to use them as a Transformers style form is honestly cute overboard to the point that it's just becoming cuteness show off. Yes, it is kind of a really rude criticism, but let's be honest, as much as I found bunnies mostly adorable, I don't think that this type of scenery of cuteness fighting off the crows isn't really a good way to wrap up this episode. It is good for some people, but for me, it really isn't. When it comes to the 9 episodes that are better than this, I can watch through them at least twice or thrice whenever I actually feel into the mood to rewatching episodes. But for this, I can only watch once in a while. But I can say that it's much more better than the other episodes that aren't included on this list. Well, excluding Family Troubles and Panda 2. Number 9. Squids. What I actually enjoy about this episode is that it took inspiration from Finding Dory, which is a standalone sequel to Finding Nemo. And people say that this episode took inspiration from those 2 movies, but for me personally, it's mostly Finding Dory. The Bears found a small squid that's being served to so many customers who are eating the squid for food. Yeah, even if I never went to these type of stores before, mainly the fact that I don't live by an ocean where there's tons of fish, but if you ever see a fish who is also a squid that is actually living and is being served to so many customers, I would probably do the same thing what the Bears are doing, well, aside from stealing and causing so much havoc. And even though that this episode is somewhat similar to what Hank is doing involving Dory, even if it's mostly different in this episode instantly reminds me of Captain Kaboo, which, if you saw me did a review of that episode last week, you can tell that I really didn't enjoy this episode. Mainly the fact that it made Num Num really unlikable, and the fact that the Bears had to run away in order to set the crab free. This episode actually does this a lot more better, mainly the fact that there's no unlikable antagonist that completely caused so much stress with the Bears. What the Bears are trying to do is just trying to send the squid home while not being eaten by anyone. Granted, this episode isn't the exact same structure as Captain Kaboo, but let's be honest, I'm pretty sure that me seeing Bears completely sending a squid home while not completely getting into criminal trouble is a lot more better, since that they still didn't deserve it in Captain Kaboo. And besides, for what this episode has to offer other than the Bears is trying to send the squid home, really makes this episode a lot more entertaining and a lot more enjoyable to sit through. In the second half of this episode, where we see the Bears taking the squid into one of the aquarium tanks, As well, I think that the episode is really starting to become like Finding Dory. Granted, it is mostly debatable on whether you can settle on the fact that this episode does take inspiration, but look at some of the scenes right here. Squids asks one of the sea animals in the aquarium to be an adopted parent to the squid, to which they denied. We all know that the fishes in this show cannot talk, but the comparison I'm making is the fact that Dory actually asks the other fishes on where they came from and where his parents were, and they just don't know. Granted, it's not really a good comparison, but with this episode taking inspiration of just trying to send the squid back to where he belongs, it's just like the equivalent of the bears being Hank, while the squid is Dory in this case. And since the squid doesn't talk like the bears do, it really makes this episode a lot more adorable, but in a right way compared to the last entry. This is why I consider the second half of this episode the major highlight through the majority of this episode. The first half of this episode is a good setup, while the second half makes a major improvement. And the ending where the squid is about to face off a giant eel is honestly unexpected, because what he's trying to do is to lure the eel into a trap. Okay, maybe that's not really the case, but the fact that he actually made a stand for himself while also protecting the bears is really a heartwarming moment to actually see a smaller animal helping out bigger animals who are still cubs during this time. And after that, it leads to the mother squid stopping the eel from eating her son along with the bears. I really think that this episode really does a really good job, and this is only the 9th number of this whole list, while the episodes afterwards are just gonna get much more better. And the ending song of this is really heartwarming. Granted, it's not like Unforgettable or Beyond the Sea from Finding Nemo and Finding Dory, but with this episode being its own thing with its own originality, the song is really good to listen to. I know I didn't talk about the songs by reviewing the episodes from this show, but the thing is, they're mostly for montage purposes, which is what We Bear Bears is mostly about. And since this is a babies episode, they decided to do a song that isn't for montage, and they use it for an ending to make this episode a lot more better. And I can say for a fact that for what the episode did involving bunnies did overboard cuteness, this episode did cuteness the right way while also being a very entertaining episode from beginning to end. And the fact that it's all in Japanese really gives the show more originality, and now I can understand onto why the spinoff has anime-style animation to make it its own thing instead of using the same animation that they use from this show. Granted, people may debate on which animation style that they prefer the most, but at the same time, I don't have the choice to pick which one is better. All I can say is that what the spinoff usually does is just trying to be a lot more unique in its own way. I guess it really shows it took inspiration from this show since it's an actual spinoff. Number 8. Sandcastles. With this being one of the final episodes involving the baby episodes, I found this really entertaining for what they do into having the bears to go on a beach, but at the same time, make a huge sandcastle as part of their home. Since we never had an episode where the 3 bears made up their choice to stay at San Francisco in a cave for the rest of their lives, this episode honestly makes it a lot more interesting to see the bears make a gigantic castle by themselves. Hey, if they'll manage to go through so much crazy adventures, they can make an entire castle made out of sand. Also in this episode, Panda encounters Dara, who is another one of his love interests, but unlike Lucy and a girl that I'm going to be discussing in the next 2 days, Dawa is mostly in this episode mainly for having fun to be in a sandcastle with the bears. Seriously, Panda actually thought that Dawa is going to be his girlfriend, but in reality, it's mostly a game of what children usually do on the beach and elsewhere. You know, with this being one of the final episodes from the show since it aired in April and the show ended its weekly episodes, not really weekly episodes, but the amount of episodes until the final episode aired, which was Panda's birthday, seeing these episodes honestly feels like a lot more unique differences compared to episodes I've seen when it comes to Panda dealing with gore issues. And when I mean gore issues, I mean his crush on certain girls that he's totally into. But considering that he's a cub and Dahlia is a young child, I really think that they're trying to tone it down in order to make this a little bit more appropriate than what Panda went through when he got older. But the main focus of this episode is that Dahlia's sisters and cousins forces her to head back home, otherwise she will be grounded. It's mainly the fact that Dahlia's siblings and cousins are completely rude regardless because they're teenagers, and the fact that Dahlia just isn't like them. Like, she isn't how she reacts whenever something bad happens like her sister and cousins do. And with this whole thing declaring war against the bears, I'm assuming that this episode is just trying to do something with Dahlia other than just being another love interest for Panda. Granted, I can appreciate what this episode is trying to do in order to be different, with the title of it being Sandcastle, instead of just being mostly about royalty and what the castle is supposed to be like. But on the other hand, I'm pretty sure that if I'm ever going in a situation where I'm going to war against other children who declare one of those siblings to come back to them in order to teach them a lesson because of their selfish desires or just their own attitudes in general, I'm pretty sure that I would easily just give up, because if the bears are humans in this case, they will probably be in some serious situations that could easily prevent them from heading to another direction of what they can find their new home. But aside from that, I think that this episode is mainly like the other episodes I've seen involving the characters making their own sandcastle. I did watch an episode from the Fairly Odd Parents where Timmy has wished a huge sandcastle to get Trixie's attention. So I'm pretty sure that doing this type of ideal by completely having the bears make their own sandcastle, there's really nothing bad whatsoever. So I actually found the castle really entertaining. Not really entertaining, but really unique to actually see that the bears made all of it possible. But let's be honest, we all know that this isn't the right place for the bears to stay, because other than bread that they found in the trash can, there's really nothing that they can eat other than just sand. Just sand. So regardless of the wave completely destroying the sandcastle, they're still out of luck. And considering this is the only time we get to see Dahlia, I honestly don't miss her. Unlike Lucy in her final episode appearance, which I'm gonna get to at the end of this month. So I can say that this episode is pretty good, but at the same time, there's really nothing I can actually discuss when it comes to the bears just spending most of their time in a sandcastle. I know I'm not giving this episode much credit since that it's above Squids, but at the same time, I'm pretty sure that it does have some qualities that can actually keep me occupied. If anything, the only thing that I actually give this episode more credit than the last entry is that it is still a beach episode. The only beach episode where the bears go on the beach. That's basically all I got. Number 7, The World. The very first baby episode that aired all back in 2015 where the show was new. the major reasons onto why this episode isn't as high as people usually think is mainly the fact that it really didn't age well. But at the same time, it's just that the newer episodes were much more better than this. So we should really expect that newer episodes will easily trump the older episodes. This episode centers around the bears, and the only thing that they have in the middle of nowhere is the box, which a guy stole after he ran away when the bears were sleeping. And I'm pretty sure that just by watching this episode, after watching all the later episodes, I'm pretty sure that they took this whole magical box concept in the spin-off was from the box in this episode. Less, I'm totally aware that the box in this episode isn't the same box that the bears use in the spin-off, but considering that the first episode was mainly all about boxes, I'm pretty sure that they really knew how to handle the spin-off by having one box into the mix, because we pretty much know that the bears all go to different places by foot in this. So just seeing them using the box to go to different places in the spin-off kind of works as being a spin-off. So I'm pretty sure that the style that they did in the spin-off will probably won't be any difference if the bears continue to walk without the box. Anyway, when the bears get inside the factory, they see so many boxes, and they want all of them, but they can't be able to share it because they want to make their own paradise in boxes.
Oh, don't you talk about my boxes! I like boxes!
Anyway, I can understand that some people may not like this episode for the direction of what it's trying to do with the bears not getting along, but considering that this was the first episode, which I assume that took place after the bears meet each other in the movie, this is mostly the development of the bears just trying to get along as brothers. So I'm pretty sure for what they're doing in this probably makes sense in the concept of the building relationship. The song If Only That Day Was Today, being sung by Panda and Grizz, is actually a really good song. For me personally, if I did listen to the song, if I was interested into the series back in 2015, I would have given an okay opinion, but at the same time, it wasn't really necessary other than just having a cute moment between the bears, since that they're not closer after having an argument about boxes. And every time I see these two, and especially Ice Bear, just trying to spend their own times alone in their own locations in boxes, it actually is mostly relatable since that they're just trying to find a home for themselves. And with this being the first ever episode, it's actually really relatable to see these three reunite. Granted, saying that honestly makes it a lot more odd to say that in this episode, but considering this takes place after the movie, where the three actually meet for the first time, I think it actually kind of makes sense. And the sequence where Baby Grizz and Ice Bear are just trying to save Panda from getting delivered to New Hampshire, it's honestly a really entertaining sequence for the second half of this episode after the song they sung. Okay, that doesn't make any sense, but you know what I mean. I'm pretty sure that if without the second half of this episode will probably be a lot more bland, because if we're just going to have an episode, well, it's mostly the bears just having arguments, and the fact that this was the very first episode before the movie came out 5 years later, I'm pretty sure that rewatching this episode really changes your perspective when it comes to the newer episodes. All in all, I'm pretty sure that the world is mostly underappreciated if you haven't saw the movie or you just binge watching the episodes from beginning to end, including the movie. Granted, it's gonna take a long time for newcomers to understand what this episode is trying to do, but if you actually enjoy it for your first time, then that's really good for you. So I'm pretty sure that this episode does do a good impression after you watch the movie, or you can watch it the first time if you're binge watching it. Number 6, Bears to Men. I wasn't originally going to add this, mainly the fact that I'm not a fan of musicals. Not really as in musicals, but mainly a guy's dream to succeed in a musical. Nothing against talented singers whatsoever, I'm just not into the whole concept. But what this episode does right is to make the one episode characters like Nate completely likable and what they're mostly capable of into interacting with the baby bears. Let me tell you that whenever I completely see the characters in the baby episodes, they're really memorable, even though that they're just only there for one episode only. Mainly the fact that Nate is completely just trying to accomplish his dream to become a great singer, and since that the bears help him out in order to accomplish that dream, this entire episode honestly feels like an extension to have multiple characters into it in order to make things a lot more interesting. Granted, people may debate that they can watch episodes without characters getting in the way, but at the same time, for me personally, watching solo people accomplish the dreams on their own is mostly predictable. I mean, granted, I did watch Pixar's Soul, and even with the changes that they did, it's still the same. The main character needs to accomplish his dream in order for it to come true. And during the point where Nate needs to get in with a parent guardian, and considering that his pops won't be into the idea of him accomplishing his dream, the bears obviously are there just to support him by doing that disguise that they did earlier in the episode in order to allow him inside. And when the bears manage to get him inside of the talent show, they plan to sing together in front of everyone. But since that the bears have situations with the security, Nate accidentally revealed himself in front of everyone in the crowd, which results him to go solo without the bears, and he managed to succeed without the bears. Before I get into the ending of this episode, I need to talk about the 2 songs that are being sung in this episode. Played Smooth is actually a really good song sung by Nate and the Bears. For me personally, this is basically every other song being sung by black people, whether they're mostly into the mood, into saying those types of genres. Granted, other people can sing songs like that, but since this is mainly focusing on a black character, it's always understandable what song he's gonna sing, since that he really grew into those types of genres. And Tell Me being sung by Nate himself is a really good song. I'm gonna be really honest with you, if the Bears actually sing this song wouldn't be that good. I'm just saying, I understand that they're trying to make the dynamic of Nate and the Bears really good, and they did with the first song, but I guess that every other song won't be able to work with everyone being part of it. And with this song being a solo song, Nate actually accomplished his dream to become a great, talented singer. And when we get to see his father apologizing for him because he didn't believe him, it's mostly what we see in every other singing movie involving the solo character accomplishing his dreams. But all I can say is that this point of the episode is mainly a way for Nate to go solo while the Bears end up getting half of the $500 that they helped Nate to win, which they end up spending at the end of the episode, which they're children, I can't really blame them, but at the same time, they're really loose with money. This episode is honestly a really good episode to actually see the Bears manage to help Nate to accomplish his dream, even though that they didn't do the singing during the whole talent show. But helping this guy's dream in order to become a reality is what this episode is mainly good when it comes to a baby episode. Let me tell you that even though that episodes 10 through 6, which is the ones I've talked about, are really good, the next 5 episodes easily trumps it. Coming up at number 5 as the top 5 episodes from We Bear Bears and Baby episodes is The Fail. Let me tell you that this episode is really good when it comes to, even with the cliche that it's trying to do with the antagonist just trying to get fame and greed, this episode actually shows of how the bears are really adorable but also really good to get so much attention. If you really thought that the last entry was mainly about the bears just trying to get attention, but in reality is mostly helping Nate accomplish his dream, then this episode is all about them getting the attention of so many people, all because Lewis, the character who is the antagonist, is desperate to get money and get so much attention from others. Usually, episodes like this isn't really good considering that one of the characters is really unlikable, but for how it's set up and the fact that this is mainly about baby bears and not the adult bears, is what I like to call a prime We Baby Bear Bears episode. Because when I said that the bears need attention from others, is the fact that they want to get adopted badly. And considering that they end up doing so as the series goes on, and the fact that it's not what they wanted, it's always difficult to be adopted by a family who actually cares about animals. Unless if those animals are mostly dogs, cats, fishes, or any types of animals that humans can handle. But for bears, it really goes to show that this show actually knows that bears having as pets isn't really a good idea, and it's something that doesn't work in the real world. And considering that Grizz, Panda, and Ice Bear are literally the only bears that we get to see, unlike in the movie where there's so many bears being trapped, society actually does work out even outside of San Francisco by throwing the logic that bears cannot be pets. Granted, there is an episode that centers around the bears being dogs, but on the other hand, they were never adopted, so that doesn't count. The majority of this episode, like I said earlier, is that the bears need to be adopted, and when they meet Lewis, all he's doing is just trying to get fame and fortune from so many customers, and uses the bears for attraction. And considering that we saw Grizz, who is just trying to knock the bottles down, ends up hitting Lewis's crotch, yes, off screen, I'm pretty sure that they're just trying to have some kind of adult humor into this show, even in the baby episodes. Granted, though, somewhat adult jokes in other episodes, but at the same time, I haven't checked on those yet. I mean, I did, but I probably missed out on them. And Lewis gets his just desserts, while the bears leave. Let's just say that even though that Lewis only appears once in this, he honestly doesn't deserve a better life because of the fact that he just can't be able to handle everything on his own. But just like the bears is just trying to find a family to be adopted, but at the same time, gain cursed. But before I get to the next entry, we should always remember the song that the bears sung in this episode. Play the Game is one of my favorite songs from the show. Since it's being sung by child actors instead of adult actors, it really makes the sequence in this song really adorable to see the bears just trying to get attention, but at the end of the day, it's mostly a scam just so that Lewis can get more attention. But we can tell that these bears don't want to stay here forever. Regardless of them wanting to be adopted, it's a lot more difficult that the fact that they're just trying to do everything to oppress everyone, but everyone is just getting unfairly treated because of how the game is rigged. But then again, it's mostly Lewis just trying to do it his own way instead of doing it the bears way. I'm pretty sure that if I ever come across bears like these three, I would easily take the wood and not use it for more attention, because I'd rather wait in the mini-game stand of my setup and just wait until any other customer is actually interested to play my game. Enough said. Number 4, Roman. Yes, I'm not good with the R's, but at the same time, this is the best I can spell it out. Anyway, Ramen is an episode where the Bears are in Japan, which took place to an episode I'm gonna get to much later. And they encountered Kazuni, who is a chef, and she's really ashamed because she isn't good at making the ramen, which is a type of dish that she's just trying to impress her father, who disapproves on the fact that his daughter is a terrible chef. Let me just say, when it comes to passing the next generation, it's always difficult to have your son be better just like you. Well, not really better, but at the same time, at the levels on just trying to be a successor in order to make the passing of the next generation work out. One of the reasons why this episode is ranked higher on this list is the fact that we get the same concept of the Bears helping a human out, but instead of accomplishing their dream, it's mainly them just trying to impress their father. Because let's be real, in order to make a restaurant successful, is to have their father be impressed in the efforts that you improved. Not only that, Kazumi is a really, really likable character. Not a likable character as there's another character who is better than her as this list continues, but on the other hand, I actually found her motivations really work in her charming personality. I can say without her in this episode won't really work when it's mainly the three bears just trying to make the recipe. And speaking of the recipe, the whole montage involving the four just trying to find ingredients for the ramen recipe is a really, really good montage. Mainly the fact that it's another Japanese song. I don't know what it is, but the Japanese songs in this show just becomes a lot more memorable and really good to listen to. I guess it really goes to show that the qualities that are different in a show can be the major highlight if they're done correctly. But the biggest highlight, in my opinion, is the ending. Well, the four are trying to make the ramen, the pot accidentally gets knocked out to the ground, resulting them to lose all the process that they worked after getting the ingredients. But then Kazumi came up with an idea that can help her solution to impress her father. She makes her own special dish instead of making ramen, and when her father tries it out, there was no response, except that he finished the whole dish. All I can say is that the music, along with the line deliveries from the characters, it just makes this episode a lot more enjoyable to watch. Just thinking that this is something that places usually do when it comes to its citizens, and it shows a little bit exposure involving Japan, I can really understand that there's so many times that people enjoy wee baby bears and the locations that they go to. I assume that the locations are mostly the highlights, since that we can actually get to see more outside of San Francisco. But considering that the spinoff actually takes this concept and makes it a lot more interesting, I'm pretty sure that they pretty much learned from the best. And the best was from these episodes. Even though this episode isn't ranked as the top 3 on this list, I still can be able to rewatch this episode over and over again if I'm ever in the mood to watch an episode repeatedly. But then again, I don't usually do that much, so it's mostly once in a while type of thing. Number 3, Laser Warrior. One of the reasons why I rank this episode as one of my favorite episodes, it's mainly the bears just trying to survive in order to get some ice cream. Granted, the plot is mostly predictable, but considering that they're actually making this laser tag game a lot more serious when it comes to a little kid's perspective, this is basically like Craig of the Creek or Codename Kids Next Door, where children are just getting themselves into serious situations. Granted, Codename Kids Next Door is completely different between Craig and the Creek and episodes like this, but at the same time, I really think that what this episode does best is just to give the children and baby bears do something mostly heroic that what adults usually do in serious situations. With this episode mainly about the bears just trying to win the laser tag game so that they can win a giant ball of ice cream, and the fact that Panda was the last Bale standing in order to win this whole thing really makes this episode a lot more entertaining, since that Gwiz and Ice Bale are mostly in the zone to play the game, but for Panda, since that he's supposed to be different than the two, isn't really capable of playing this game. He came across a girl that told him that this whole game is mostly a lie and it's mostly about getting yourself into serious danger. This is what children usually act whenever they go into a game like this when it comes to laser tag or anything that isn't meant to be mostly toned down for simpleness activity. Since that this game is mostly about winning a huge ball of ice cream, there's always going to be competition regardless, since that kids desperately want sweets no matter what. With that being said, even though that I never played laser tag, I did seen it so many times on videos and movies, which includes this one when it comes to episodes. What I actually found a lot more enjoyment from this episode is the fact that it actually made an episode focusing on the simple game a lot more complicated when you put the baby bears into a situation. Granted, you can replace the baby bears with different normal human characters and the plot won't change, but at the same time, the bears still haven't had any food, and the only thing that they had before they went into the laser tag game was a licking stickers. Like, licking stickers are like you can completely taste something that is a different fruit on that sticker. Granted, it's literally the only thing that you can eat something, but at the same time, the flavor will be lost by time. So it actually makes sense that the bears would easily be in the laser tag so that they can win a giant ball of ice cream. By the way, if anyone's gonna mention that this character is similar to the character that I'm gonna be reviewing in the episode that she's in the next 2 days, I can say that she is like her, but at the same time, her hair just isn't really the same, even when it's short. I'm just saying. And it's really odd that this character didn't age that much when the bears got older. It just really doesn't make any sense that people may debate that this character has a height ability that automatically got her higher, even with the age that she has, other than the ages from others. I'm just laying that out there, that it could be her, but at the same time, I'm pretty doubtful. By the way, the ending is one of the reasons why this episode isn't as high as you probably expected. I get that they're Cubs, but considering that Panta went through everything, even though that he didn't do much during the laser tag, it's really a shame that he mostly just messed everything up, and the fact that it's supposed to be for laughs. These are bears who just don't have a lot of food or anything in order to get what they want after they went through such a very laseristic situation. Okay, that isn't really a word, but I tried. But overall, I still enjoy this episode for what it is, even if it's just a simple episode involving laser tag. Number 2, Baby Bears Can't Jump. Ever since I watched all the episodes, an episode involving not only baseball but also the birth of the bear stack is instantly one of the reasons why this episode is higher among the previous entries on this list. The Bears are playing a basketball game against the ragtag crew so that they can win the pizza. Unfortunately, during multiple attempts, they're not winning any points because they're not working together as a team. If you recall my last intro and outro involving a clip from this episode, is mainly the fact that this is the showcase of what the Baby Bears relationship had been improved once they got older. Not because of basketball, but also the bear stack that became a major factor in this show. Without it, this episode will probably be bland for just a simple basketball game against the other characters just for a pizza. And even though that it does lead to the characters playing basketball when they got older, this episode on the other hand, just isn't really enough without the Bale stack. And the ragtag crew in this episode being one-time only characters, with their motivations on picking on the Bales so that they could get the pizza, they're the alley kids in any other city that you come across, especially in every other show. So with their motivations being understandable, they're also a nice addition so that they can give the Bales a motivation to work together while also showcasing the stack. And if anyone's gonna bring up Charles Barkley, the basketball player in this episode, it's basketball. I may not known about the game itself since I never played it since I was at school, but for what it is, it's really popular when it comes to characters who are really experienced like Charles Barkley, even if he's only a fictional character in the We Bare Bears world. So for me personally, with him being the voice of reason, we're also just trying to give the Bears some kind of motivation, even if it's all in their imagination. He's really good, and he's basically like every other basketball player in real life. Seriously, if you're a baseball player or a football player and you see someone that you idolize with, then he's obviously the character who's like Charles Barkley in this episode. But it's just me. I never ever had someone that I idolize the most to come up to me to give me some advice in order to win or be successful. I'm just saying, that's why I'm not giving this any much credit. But even with those, I still found this episode a really good episode and one of the best I've seen from the show. But there's one more episode that is the best out of all these episodes. And if you watched all the episodes involving the flashbacks between the Cubs, you probably know what it is. Unless if you do, because there are other episodes that are easily left out or not being mentioned, but if you admire the first entry, you might understand what it is. Number 1, the best episode involving the baby bears is The Island. One of the reasons this is number 1 is mostly obvious. The characters, especially Dave, are really likable. Carla is a really likable character who only appears once throughout the entire show, and it's really a shame that we don't get to see her, but after rewatching this episode where the Bears' motivation is just to get to Japan, it really makes sense onto why the Bears and Carla got separated at the end, but I'm getting ahead of myself. When the Bears got stranded onto an island and they meet Carla and Dave, it's kind of like Castaway, except that it's a group of characters instead of just one character. I've only watched Castaway and that's it. I maybe saw Madagascar where those 4 animals, Marty, Alex, Gloria, and Melman, but at the same time, I can only think of Castaway and that's it. I'm sorry. With the majority of this episode about them just trying to figure out a way to get out of the island, and they actually found hints in order to get out of the island, Dave just instantly just prevents anyone so that he can get closer to Carla. Usually, these types of characters can easily damage an episode, but here's the thing. Dave and Carla have been on this island for so long that he's starting to become a lot more crazy, and the only thing that he has on the island is Carla. Granted, we didn't get to see the full story since that this is mostly a Baby Bears episode, but on the other hand, I'm pretty sure that if you're ever in this situation, you'll eventually use your mind, unless if you're way too smart to be into any of those situations. But I can tell you the fact that Carla isn't using her mind whenever she's feeling this distress on being an island with Dave is the issue, is the fact that she can't be able to be in a good mood whenever she is in a situation where she desperately wants to get off of this island, but Dave is just holding her back because of his plan. So it really shows that Dave just isn't her type. So it's obviously a lose-lose situation, and the scenes involving Carla and the Bears are just mainly what matters to her the most since she met the Bears. And when people say that she's mostly the mother involving the Bears, it kind of works, but since that I've mentioned before that the Bears just want to go to Japan instead of being stranded on this island, a lot just isn't going to be fleshed out between Carla and the Bears. And the scene where the Bears told Carla the truth about Dave all along, even though that she didn't thank the Bears for it, I think it actually does make sense, mainly the fact that we're not going to see a character like her again after this episode. And if people are going to address they want characters like Carla to return, even if they only have one-time appearance in these episodes, it does really lead to great episode ideas. But on the other hand, the Bears are always going to different place to play since that they don't have a home, and the main motivation is to find the perfect home. And even if we didn't see an episode where they actually choose San Francisco as the true place to have their own shelter, it actually makes these episodes a lot more important while also unique, since we never actually find out of where the Bears found their home in San Francisco, and the fact that most of the characters that they come across don't appear again. You need to understand that the Bears go to different place to place so that they can investigate on what they want to live in, and whether they got the chance in some episodes, they just don't like it because it just isn't good enough for them. And even though that I can understand that people are really disappointed that they're not going to see characters like Carla again, and for me personally, the entries that I've mentioned involving certain characters that I do want to return, I'm pretty sure of what the style of these types of episodes are supposed to be is the fact that the one-time characters are still treated as plot devices for the characters. But on the other hand, it's not really a bad thing if they only appear in one episode, unless if their characters are really likable. So with that being said, Carla is the best one-time only character in these episodes. Her lullaby that she's sung to the Bears while they're trying to get to sleep is a really good scene when it comes to what the Bears are dealing with while being on a stranded island, while being with two humans, one who is mostly a supportive mother, while the other is desperate for Carla's attention. So I can tell that for what this episode has it all. Granted, people can debate on which episode is superior to this, but for me personally, The Island is my favorite episode involving the Baby Bear episodes, and easily one of my favorite episodes from this show if I'm putting this episode into a We Bear Bears top 10 episodes. Anyway, that's my top 10 list of Baby Bear episodes, and this video was longer than I thought, but it's rare for me to do a top 10s videos like this, and sadly to think that this isn't going to be the last time I'm going to be doing this for a long while for what I have in store for Summerpalooza 3. Let me just tell you that I just want Summerpalooza 3 to be a lot more bigger compared to the last two Summerpaloozas. I want it to be a lot more different, and also want to make things a lot more exciting, even if you're not really on board with it. Granted, we're just going to have to wait and see what Summerpalooza 3 can deliver. Anyway, I'm Lonely Fanboy 4 here, and I'm going to be uploading 2 more We Bear Bears reviews in the next 2 days of this week.
Let's get this started again. Me and my whole